Alright, today we're going to start learning how to do UI and UX. But first, before we can do that, I'll give you some 10 key design points for mobile apps. The first tip I'm going to give you is to keep it focused. The best mobile apps focus on doing one thing very well. You should be able to describe that your app does in one sentence without any ends. The user should be able to launch it, use it, and put it away in seconds, having used its primary purpose. If your user has to navigate through your stages, levels, or certainly your menus to be productive, your app will be quickly uninstalled. You have to be very careful when it comes to this because confusion in the menus will really give compromise to your design or to your app. Now, second tip, use the back button appropriately. On Android, the native OS supplied back button should navigate the user back consistently. On iOS, where the back button is software controlled, you should always supply a back button and it should always be in the top left corner where the user expects it. Following the conventions of back button behavior and locations specific to your operating system is critical to making your app meet your users' expectations. So, you should always have a return button when it comes to the apps. There are a few exceptions when it comes to the apps such as Instagram, but no worries, because Instagram is very easy to navigate when it comes to the app. Now, we're going to look into the third tip, which is think of the keyboard. Most mobile apps have one or more screens that use the keyboard input. Unfortunately, many designers don't think about how the screen would look once on-screen keyboard is activated. When you do your testing, make sure the user always has enough on-screen context to know what they are doing, even when the on-screen keyboard is activated. And then, fourth tip, you have to consider placeholders thoughtfully. If your application only has a few data input fields, placeholders inside the fields are fine and can make your app look cleaner. If your application has more than a few data entry fields, placeholders instead of field labels can become very confusing. For simplicity's sake, you should always have fewer. Once the user has entered some information in the field, unless that information is self-evident as to what it is, they won't know what the information is supposed to be. So keep it simple, keep it clean, so that there would be avoiding any confusions and bad experience. Now, on my fifth tip, challenge new features. Always try to challenge the features that was present during the time of the old days. In the old days of application design, software developers focused on adding as many features as possible to their applications. They measured success on being able to tick more feature boxes than the competition. In the mobile revolution has really changed this ballgame. In desktop applications, a marginally useful feature added in a sub-menu that has fewer users found useful was probably a good idea because it could be the key to differentiate your application versus the competition. In mobile applications, a marginally useful feature makes your user interface cluttered and difficult to navigate. Now, on my sixth tip, put tabs in the right place. On iOS, the primary tab navigation doesn't look good like tabs. You should always try they are icons at the bottom of the window that a user uses to switch between major topic areas of the application. iOS users don't expect the function at the top of the window where an Android user expects it. On Android, tabs are typically placed on the top of the application and can scroll left to right. So you should always know the behaviors of your audience. Keep it that in mind. The key observation here, if your app needs to rely on a tab concept as the primary navigation to the main topic area of your app, you will need to place them differently on iOS versus Android. Now, on the 7th tip, try to look after your button sizes. This is very important as well. There is a tendency in simplistic design that says in order to add one or more thing, we can fit it all in it if we just shrink the buttons or sizes a little. But this is a very compromising and slippery path to choose. If you've ever tried to use a web page on your smartphone that wasn't designed for mobile applications or mobile standards, you know the experience can be a little bit frustrating, because if you make super minuscule buttons and you put it on a mobile, it looks like a microscopic life form or a little tiny speck. So you should try to always consider the sizes as well. So pinch zooming enough to be able to click the correct hyperlink in an app. It's even more problematic as the user doesn't have the option to zoom in. Keep your button sizes big enough so that users could easily test your app on a small phone like an iPhone 4, or to make sure it was comfortably usable. Now, we're going to our 8th tip. Consider the placement of your buttons. When a user is holding a smartphone in their hands, the bottom half of the screen is easily reached by their dexterous thumbs, their giant thumbs. Right-handed users can access the button on the right side of the phone, and easiest lefties to the opposite. Try to consider it to be compatible for both left-handed and right-handed people. Or if you want to be able to use your app one-handed, keep this in mind. We're going to our next tip here. Provide the information your user needs. Anytime you're present your user with a request for input, think about the information the user will need to make a decision as to what action to take or what requirements that they should do. If your UI or user interface doesn't make that information, it has some pretty bad consequences. It should be available in the same location. You're prompting them for input. They might need to cancel out and navigate back to where the information is to come back and to make the decision. You have to save your users the pain and to make the information necessary to make the decision at the location where a decision is to be made. So I suggest categorize each function as to only limited to that function as well, because if you mix and match that, it is a mess. So now to my last point to you or advice, watch your image resolution. This is most of the time disregarded by most designers. You should not fall under this trap. So modern smartphones have staggeringly high resolutions that can look absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, if you're still using a low resolution image, more appropriate to a website, as your icons, your app will look grainy and fuzzy, especially next to all the native operating systems. Rendered fonts and gradients. Make sure you're using 264 ppi. That's 264 ppi or higher images, and they should look crisp and clean. Remember, that's the Q, the CC, crisp, clean. There are higher resolution tablets out there than the iPad and the Retina, like the Nexus 10, as at 300 ppi or pixels per inch. But 264 ppi images will still look crisp and clean even on other devices. An even better approach is to use vector-based images that can scale to any resolution. Remember that. It's a good tip. Now, I managed to give you all the 10 tips that I can provide you so that I'll be able to help you in your endeavor in creating your app. So I'll see you in the next lecture, and happy designing, my friend.